Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of Nielsen Power Chats. I'm very excited to have with me Danny Hastings, who is the founder of the official Latino Film Festival. And we're going to talk a little bit about Latino representation in Hollywood, especially here ahead of the Oscars. Hi, Danny.
Hey, how are you, Stacie?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, man. Excited about this year and all the possibilities that are coming.
I am too, but I have been I've been reflecting with all the conversation around the Oscars, which are very diverse this year. We have a lot of representation, both female, Latino, indigenous, and otherwise. And there are a lot of really amazing stories coming out. And wow, representation is so great this year. There's so much great content, but what do you have to do to get yourself into the pipeline to end up being recognized? So this brings me to the work that you've been doing. Before we address that question, can you talk a little bit about the official Latino Film Festival, the work that you do, and how it creates a pipeline for talent and for creators in their career?
The official Latino Film Festival started as a kind of like a challenge because, I'm very vocal on my, social media, and I've been doing my work for over 30 years now, from a photographer to a filmmaker to now entrepreneur. And back the year before Oscars So White hashtags came out, I started ranting and started complaining because I noticed that there was no Latino anywhere. Like, at that time, Alfonso Cuarón won with Gravity, which included Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. And, of course, Latinos were like, Mexican one. Yeah, Viva Mexico, Latinos represent. I was like, is it really, though? Is it really one, a triumph for Latinos in general, or a triumph for a person, right, that happens to be Latino, right? Is it a win for the community, right? Alfonso didn't include any Latinos in front of the camera, right? And for me, it was, not that he should, but it didn't have any, right? So I'm like, it's not really a win for us. So where are we? Where are we in this space? How come we're invisible? How come we're 20% of the country, right? And none of the films had not one Latino that year. So I was complaining, and somebody was like, well, do something about it if you talking so much talk. And I was like, you know what? I will. So I decided to create a film festival that nurtures and supports what American Latinos have been doing here in the States, right? The criteria was very simple. You have to be one of the three. You could be the director, the writer, or the producer, which means you could collaborate with anybody. There's white people, there's black people, there's Asian people in our film festival. We're not just showing Latino films, but we want to see what our filmmakers are doing as well, because we weren't getting those shots.
Right.
You know what I mean? We weren't being accepted, right? So inclusion means everybody. That's what inclusion means. There's been a lot of negative talk about inclusion, diversity, because some people feel that, it doesn't include everybody, but it does. The word inclusion itself means everybody. You know what I mean? So when it's out of balance, when you only see a certain group or a demographic just winning, and you don't see the rest, that's why hashtag Oscars So White came about, right? And then that's why, you see all this diversity and inclusion, which now it's like, it's getting like a, bad PR, because some people feel that it excludes white people, but it doesn't. It includes everybody. It's just making sure everybody gets a first shot, right? And that's kind of like what I want for my film festival. I don't want my film festival to feel like we're giving people, priority over. We're just showcasing what we're doing in a playing field that everybody is welcomed.
And creating an opportunity for creators and for and producers and others and talent to be recognized and be seen, right? And so I feel like when we look at the environment today and we see how the Oscars have diversified, it's not enough, right? It's still not enough. But it helps us see like, okay, our work hasn't been in vain. The work we're doing is making progress. But just because we see progress at the top and in the most visible spaces, it doesn't mean that it's that the pipeline or that the talent that we are nurturing at the beginning of their careers, or where all of it starts in, in the indie world, like how are we ensuring and creating pathways without those huge budgets? I mean, you can't, Coleman Domingo, amazing Afro Latino, gay, great representation, not the film, but him. And I still think like, but what do you have to do? And I love to know about how, the work that you're creating in terms of the festival, but also we spoke the other day about some of the other work that you're doing to help ensure that this pipeline is robust and the projects that are coming through this pipeline find their way to being produced and being distributed.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other. I mean, the Oscars is just one thing, and then the Oscars is like, you got to come with the bucks. You know what I mean? Like you really have to put
Big
in.
budgets.
Yeah, you do have to have the big budget. And if it's like a low budget, then it has to have somebody big too in order to to break through, right? Like they take a lot of, it's the Oscars, but there's also amazing film festivals like Sundance,
Yep.
South by Southwest, Tribeca, that do an amazing job, showcasing all the voices, and I think because of those festivals, right? Because of those festivals are showcasing all these different voices. The Oscars probably took a good look at what they were doing, and they were like, okay, we need to also pick up. And they've in a matter of 3 to 5 years, they just tremendously up the representation, right? So I think we're in a good path. I think what filmmakers need to understand is also, well, things are changing rapidly, Stacie. Like it's not, the gatekeepers that were usually, the gatekeepers of all this stuff is changing, because now you have the power to, self-finance, self-distribute, go direct to consumer.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Technology is changing, it's disrupting everything. Technology is a great ally to the independent filmmaker, right? Because you can find ways also to monetize your stuff and then just make an impact, right? If you do things right, right? So I see like the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think we need to focus so much in how things work in Hollywood versus go the true independent route, and that means understanding how financing and distribution works, right? Usually our filmmakers are only worried about, oh, I need to raise $100,000 to make this film. I need the 100,000, and then
I
they
need to
do
get
it.
distribution, right? And they're not thinking about always what you just talked about, which are
They
all
don't.
these alternative ways to monetize content.
Right.
There are dozens and dozens of new smaller streaming platforms that are looking for diverse content, want to work with diverse creators. So perhaps that model about what distribution looks like is evolving as increasingly people's living rooms become their box offices.
And understanding your market. Like if you understand your market, you're speaking to a direct consumer, you're going to be okay, because they're going to find ways to see your film, right? So a lot of filmmakers, the problem that we're having in our community is that they really only worry about the budget of the film, right? So they go and make the film, and then what? And then how do you make the next film? They repeat this pattern, right? And all of a sudden, financing a film it's really one of the most difficult things, like for any art form. But finding the distribution and getting the money back is even harder. It's harder.
But as you were saying too, with all of the, with technology and the appetite for diverse content, either from creators or storylines increasing among audiences, it presents this huge opportunity to rethink what that traditional distribution looks like. There and monetizing that content in a different way, right? If it goes, for example, to a streamer, There's this an ad model potentially, but it makes me think. You mentioned mentioned Sundance earlier and some of the other festivals, South by Southwest, both of which Nielsen has a presence at. And I wanted to share with you at Sundance, we had the opportunity to launch something we call Diversity Spotlight, and that is really putting sort of our boots on the ground around resourcing the decision makers in Hollywood with information and data from independent films and independent creators. And so, I would love to hear your reaction to it. Essentially, what we did is we worked with a number of advocacy groups that are focusing on better representation in Hollywood. So we'll think about Illuminative and Gold House and Respectability and et cetera. The idea being, well, let's acquire from them recommended content, or content that's endorsed rather, right? And content that is from independent creators, films that don't have those budgets that you mentioned, these huge Hollywood budgets, but we can feature that content within Studio System, which is our is used by casting agents and Hollywood, all of Hollywood, to really better understand what's happening in the film world. And if we can feature this content, that's another way we can operationalize discovery of content, creators, and talent associated with indie and other content. So I wanted to ask for your reaction around the work you're currently doing and something like Diversity Spotlight, which is totally different from advocacy. We can talk a lot about what needs to change in Hollywood, how we can improve the pipeline, but that's entirely different from operationalizing that work and saying, here's a tool that can help you find content. Here's a tool that can help you discover talent. And in your case, here's a film festival where you can come to see, to learn, to hear, and to meet, some of the creators and talent that are making the content that is going to be among the most desired among audiences.
All of us are doing our part in advocacy, right? And basically bringing, to the forefront those voices that we haven't heard, right? But that takes them to just a certain point, right? I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be a understanding of the business of film, right? Like of the business of film.
That's
like
where data comes in.
Yeah, like understanding that most filmmakers do not make their money back on their first film. You know what I mean? Like most of them. It's very rarely that you're going to make, if you spend $500,000, that you're going to make that $500,000 back. You know what I mean? But what happens is that, and what companies don't tell the filmmakers is that, instead of looking for money for one film, build a slate of films, right? Have 3 to 5 films that you can do in 5 years. With that, you could go to a bank, right? You don't need now,
financing.
You don't need the streaming, right? So if you go to a bank and then you actually can prove in case that you do have a market and people are going to see your film and this is where you're going to sell it and this is where people are going to buy it, right? You can actually get a bank to finance your slate of films, right? People will not finance one film, right? And that's what we're lacking, specifically in the American Latino community. We're lacking
like
the understanding.
Catalog. We were talking about
we're lacking that understanding. I think African Americans have been able to figure it out that if you don't invest on your own, it's not going to happen. They went and invest in their own, from Spike Lee to John Singleton to Tyler Perry. They bet on themselves, and then the community bet on them.
We can talk about the fact that Latinos are craving more diverse content, but when we back that up with data, for example, we took a look at award shows in 2020, which, by the way, was one of the year that had among the lowest diverse representation in nominees. And we saw that reflected in audiences that watched those shows. They were less diverse audiences. The more diversity in the nominees, in the pictures and the talent, the higher the diverse audience is watching that. So that's just for award show. But even when you look at film and you look at series, Latinos are watching in this case and craving content that is more diverse. Our data clearly shows that, our sentiment data. So when we serve that up, you're you're I wouldn't say guarantee, but you're certainly meeting the appetite in the marketplace, and that translates to viewership. So I love what you're saying, that yes, we have to advocate for us, we have to ask for it, but we really need to put the wheels in motion, and we need to support it with data on the industry.
That's great to know, especially coming from numbers, because it was always my gut feeling that, that we wanted to see ourselves, we wanted to see the full spectrum, the rainbow that Latinos can offer, right? We go from Afro Latino to Anglo Latino, right? And they're Latinos.
What advice would you give to indie creators that are trying to make it big, that are at the beginning of their career? You talked about not expending your whole budget for your first film and really thinking through how to monetize it differently. But what would be the overarching advice for indie creators? And second follow up to that is, how do we make sure that their work doesn't stay on the sidelines, that they grow from the festivals where they start and gain that recognition that ends up helping launch and continue to push their careers?
I think the answer to that question is this: like, if you wrote one script for a feature, write two more and have three scripts under your belt before you start asking for money. You know what I mean? Because it's very difficult to do it on one. And once you do that, you're going to be able to find yourself, it's like, all right, perfect example. It's like social media, right? You do a social media post today and you don't post for a year. What happens?
Yeah. You lose engagement, you lose, yeah.
What happens, So it's like, if you do it every week, you keep on. By having three films on slate, right? 3 scripts. While you're working on one, the other 2 are getting financed, So you don't have a lap between finishing one film, right? You don't have a lap. I mean, you don't have a lapse, right? So between the first film and the second film, there's no waiting time. You finish your first film, you start the second one because it's already financed. So you gotta strategize your film career, right?
So multiple pieces of content
Multiple pieces of content.
But we also you mentioned financing, and you and I discussed this the other day. So I'd love to hear your take on that. That's really where a lot falls down. It's very difficult to find financing. And it is, especially when there are questions around, the Latino audience, whether or not Latinos will support Latino content. We know that good content will be supported by all people. It's not really, any specific identity group. But financing is a challenge. And I often find when I do some work on this that diverse creators don't have the same opportunities, right? There are barriers, historical and otherwise, that are in the way, and different expectations on diverse creators than there are for others. So talk to me about one of the solutions you think is coming to the industry around financing.
Education, man. You gotta do the research, like, okay, so you say it's hard. It's hard for everybody, right? But if you're not prepared, if you don't prepare yourself and understand, right, like, what's going to be my ROI, what's going to be, how am I going to get this money back? If you don't understand that, then what you're asking for is charity. You know what I mean? And
talk to me about the financing piece, though. You told me that you think something needed to fundamentally change with who was financing these films.
100%. I think the Latino cohort, the millionaires of the United States, Latinos, so you understand, Latinos have the same amount of millionaires, same percentage of millionaires as Asian Americans have in the United States. Asian Americans are like 11%, and Latinos are like 10%. You know what I mean? It's very like equal, right? You wouldn't know that because of all the stereotypes that are, out in the media, right? You wouldn't know that, right? So, where is this cohort of Latinos looking out or looking for Latino business I'm not saying we don't want charity over here. We want Latino business, right? That can that can actually present a good case and be like, look, if you invest this amount of money, this is what you're gonna get back, right? The
Mm-hmm.
numbers are there. The market is there. We're 20%. We're one-fourth of the ticket prices. We're over
Sales. Mhm.
indexing. If we're over indexing, I don't need to tell you. You're Nielsen. You know this stuff, right? We're over indexing digitally, watch more movies than everybody else, yet there's no content for us because we haven't organized. We haven't organized as people.
Solutions that support that. You talked about funding, having our community fund more of our content, ensuring that there are more, Latinos that are producing, executive producing the content that is coming from Latinos. You talked about having for creators having multiple films kind of in the hopper and ready to go. You talked about creating like a catalog of content so that you're not really sort of relying on one piece of content finding its intended investor. Those I think are really great solutions. And I think the other one, as you said, is continuing to have places like the official Latino Film Festival where film can shine, where creators can come and show, their work, where talent can show their work, and where folks that are looking to acquire, to work with new creators and new content that is, arguably among the highest demand content for younger audiences, which are more diverse, in particular Latino audiences, can come and make those connections and see, in addition, of course, you talked about Sundance and South by Southwest, also great festivals. But I love what yours provides in the opportunity really for Latino talent and content to shine.
I think we also need a network. We don't have a network that represents the American Latino voice per se. And, similar to BET, for example, right? BET is propels within their own system stars that
Mhm.
make it out of there
True.
and then transcend from that into film. Where is our network that is pushing American Latino, talent up, right? The English speaking audience, right? And
Strong
when
point.
you see, go and look who Rudy Mancuso and Camila Mendez are, right? See their background, see how many films they're done, see like how amazing Solo Maridueña is another example.
Yeah.
Jenny Ortega, there's this new beautiful generation of Latino and Latina talent that is, young, vibrant. They're unapologetically Latino,
Mhm.
right? They're letting you know who they are, but they're also Americans, right? And I think that whoever figures out you know a sister network that can focus on these people, and they have been very attentive, but I think they killed them very early without mentioning any names. But I think whoever jumps on that right now is going to win.
That's a really strong point. It is a really strong point because that talent is then relying on traditional English language networks or English language outlets. The official Latino Film Festival is in its 10th year. A lot has changed in the past 10 years. And we know we've seen some change. We know it's not enough. But I'd love to hear from you. How do you see the next few years unfolding, the next 10? And how do you see Latino Film Festival really paving the way for Latino talent and content?
My God, I'm so glad you can see by the way I'm smiling right now. In the next 10 years, the official Latino Film Festival is going through a transformation. We recently signed a deal with partners that you will hear very soon, very influential people, and they're just excited, as we are to jump in the space, right? And these are Latinos too. These are young Latinos too that are spearheading in music, in art, and now with our partnership, we're going to add film into the company, and it's going to revolutionize. I feel what we started working on because we're focused and we're together and we understand we understand what the problem is, right? And when you understand the problem and you bring solutions to the problem, right? There's nothing but success that is going to come in, all across the board.
Nielsen, Grace Note, and Grace Note Inclusion Analytics are and Studio System are more than proud to be part of this conversation to raise the visibility of diverse talent and diverse projects with Diversity Spotlight, to work with creators like you who are bringing the opportunities forward through platforms where content can be shared. We're happy, Nielsen, to be part of the story, and we'll be continuing to, bring the data to support all the work that you're putting into place.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Let's go, mi gente. This is the time right now.
Vamos pa'lante. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this Nielsen Power Chat. Danny, so great to have you, and I can't wait to see you at the official Latino Film Festival in a few months.
Thank you so much, Stacie.